He heard an Apache widow near her horse, and she murmured the name of his late wife. James Whitman lived alone on a small ranch in Arizona, far away from the noise of the cities. The ranch had been his and his late wife Alina's dream for many years. Together, they had worked hard to build it into a place full of life, with wide fields, grazing horses, and a small orchard of fruit trees. But after Alina's death, the ranch had become quiet, almost too quiet, and James felt the emptiness in every corner of the house. The walls, once filled with laughter and soft conversations, now seemed to echo with memories. Every morning, James woke up early, as he had done for decades, to check on the animals and tend to the chores. He found comfort in the routines, though his heart often ached with the thought of Alina. Her presence was everywhere: the smell of the kitchen after breakfast, the way she would carefully brush the horses, the soft humming she did when she worked. Even though she was gone, James sometimes felt as if she was watching him from the corner of his eye, smiling at him in her gentle, loving way. One chilly morning, James stepped outside just as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. He carried his old metal bucket to fetch water from the well and noticed the dew-covered grass sparkling in the morning light. As he walked toward the barn, he saw something unusual near the edge of his property. There, standing quietly by a horse that looked calm but alert, was a woman he had never seen before. She was dressed in clothing that reminded him of old Apache traditions, with intricate patterns on her shawl and a softly decorated belt around her waist. Her long black hair was tied back, but a few strands fell gently over her face, brushing against her cheeks as the wind blew. James stopped in his tracks, unsure what to do. The woman seemed unaware of his presence, her attention entirely on the horse beside her. She moved slowly, almost gracefully, as if she were part of the morning itself. The horse nuzzled her hand, and she gently patted its neck, whispering words James could not hear. Something about the scene felt strangely familiar, even though he had never met this woman. There was a calmness around her, a quiet dignity that reminded him of Alina, and James felt a flicker of both curiosity and caution. For a few moments, James simply watched. He wondered if he should call out to her, but he hesitated. He had always respected others' privacy, and something in her posture suggested she needed this moment alone. She seemed to be speaking softly to the horse, murmuring words that carried a tone of sadness, but also of love and understanding. James noticed the way her fingers brushed over the horse's mane as if she were trying to comfort it, and the horse responded with soft, gentle whinnies. Finally, James cleared his throat softly. "Good morning," he said, his voice careful, not wanting to startle her. The woman turned her head slightly, her dark eyes meeting his. There was a brief pause, a quiet moment of recognition, though James could not explain why it felt so meaningful. She smiled faintly, a sad but warm smile, and nodded in greeting. "Good morning," she replied, her voice soft and musical, yet carrying a hint of sorrow. James could not place her accent exactly, but it had a rhythm that reminded him of stories his grandmother used to tell about the people who had lived on this land long before him. James stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. "I'm James," he said. "I live here. You're welcome to stay, but I just wasn't expecting visitors." He tried to sound casual, though his heart thumped faster than usual. There was something about this stranger that made him feel a mixture of curiosity, unease, and a strange sense of connection. The woman lowered her gaze slightly, then looked back at James. "I'm Ahioka," she said. I travel often. I didn't mean to intrude. I just needed to be here for a moment." There was a softness in her voice, a quiet sincerity, and James sensed she was telling the truth. For the next few minutes, they stood there in silence. James felt the cold morning air on his face, but it seemed warmer near her presence, though he could not explain why. He watched the way she cared for the horse, her movements gentle and respectful. He noticed the little details, The careful way she tied the reins, the way she checked the horse's hooves, the way her eyes seemed to hold stories of loss and survival. Finally, James asked, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Ahioka shook her head slightly. "No, thank you. I just needed to remember. This land, it feels familiar." There was a wistful note in her words, and James felt a strange pull in his chest. Something about her presence brought memories of Alina rushing back, memories that were both comforting and painful. He wanted to ask more, but something told him to be patient. There was respect in the silence, in the way they both simply existed together in that morning light. James decided to finish his chores first, telling her softly, "I'll be around. If you need anything, just let me know." Ahioka nodded, her gaze returning to the horse. As James worked, he found his mind wandering back to the woman. He wondered about her story, who she was, why she traveled alone with her horse, and what memories she carried. There was something in the way she moved, in the way she seemed to hold the past with both tenderness and sorrow, that reminded him of Alina. He felt a shiver run down his spine, not of fear, but of recognition, as if he were seeing a reflection of a part of his life that had been lost but not forgotten. The morning passed slowly. James finished feeding the animals, cleaned the barn, and brought water to the orchard. All the while, he stole glances at Ahioka, who stayed quietly near her horse, sometimes speaking softly, sometimes just sitting in thought. There was a stillness to her presence that made him feel calmer, even though he did not understand why. By the time the sun was higher in the sky, Ahioka had risen and walked a short distance away, still with the horse by her side. James watched her, feeling a strange sense of anticipation. Something about this day, this meeting, felt like the start of a story that he had not yet known existed. He returned to his work, but his mind remained partially with her, wondering what it all meant, and whether this chance encounter held significance beyond the simple passing of strangers. Evening came, and the sky turned soft shades of purple and gold. James sat on the porch looking at the distant mountains. He could still see Ahioka near the trees, her horse grazing calmly beside her. There was a quiet dignity about her, a sense of peace, but also of hidden sadness. James felt drawn to her story, as if he could sense that she carried something deeply important, something that could touch his own heart in ways he could not yet understand. As the day ended, James realized he had not felt this curious, this alive, in a long time. The quiet ranch had always been peaceful, but today it had felt different, alive with the possibility of connection, with the mystery of stories untold. He watched the horizon until the last light faded, thinking about the strange woman and her horse, and he wondered if the next day would bring answers or more questions. He went to bed that night with a mixture of anticipation and unease. For the first time in years, he felt that life could still surprise him, even in ways he could not yet imagine. Somewhere near the edge of his property, Ahioka slept beside her horse, carrying memories and stories of her own. And though they were strangers, the first thread of connection had already been woven, quiet, subtle, and yet powerful enough to linger in the heart. The next morning, James woke to the sound of birds singing in the orchard. The sun had just begun to rise, spilling golden light over the ranch, and for a brief moment, everything felt peaceful. He carried his bucket to the well and listened to the quiet, trying to forget the curiosity that had kept him awake the night before. His mind kept wandering back to Ahioka, the mysterious Apache woman who had appeared the day before, and to the strange pull he had felt toward her. After finishing his chores, James decided to check on the area where he had seen her yesterday. He walked slowly across the field, the dry grass crunching under his boots. The air was fresh and cool, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and the earth itself. As he approached, he saw her again, kneeling beside her horse, her dark hair catching the morning light. But this time he heard something that made him freeze in place. Her voice was soft, barely audible over the breeze, yet clear enough for him to hear a single name. Alina. James felt his heart stop. The sound of his late wife's name coming from a stranger's lips was impossible, yet here it was, carried on the wind. He blinked, unsure if he had imagined it, but when he looked again, Ahioka was still there, her head bowed as she spoke to her horse. His pulse quickened and 1,000 questions flooded his mind. How could she know Alina's name? Was this some strange coincidence, or was there a deeper connection he could not yet understand? James moved slowly, keeping his distance, not wanting to frighten her. I didn't mean to intrude, he said softly, his voice trembling slightly. Ahioka looked up, startled, her dark eyes meeting his. For a moment she seemed unsure what to say, then she smiled faintly, as if she had been expecting him in some way. "My name is Ahioka," she said, her voice calm but tinged with sadness. I knew your wife." James felt a chill run down his spine. He had never expected to hear that sentence in his life. You knew Alina?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He took a cautious step closer, curiosity overcoming his initial hesitation. "How? When?" Ahioka shifted slightly, settling her hands on the horse's neck. "Many years ago," she began, her eyes distant, as if looking back into a memory. "She came through the land where I lived for a short time. We met by chance, and we spoke about loss, about love, about life. She was kind, gentle, and full of a spirit that touched everyone she met. I remember her well." James felt a mixture of emotions, astonishment, disbelief, and a deep sense of longing. He had grieved Alina for years, never imagining that someone else had known her in this way. And yet here was a woman speaking with honesty and emotion, remembering moments that James had never known existed. He wanted to believe her, but a part of him feared that this was some trick of memory, some strange coincidence. Why are you here?" he asked cautiously. "Why come to my ranch?" Ahioka paused, her eyes reflecting the morning light. "I travel with my horse," she explained. "I have been seeking a place of quiet, a place where I can remember, and sometimes the land itself calls to those who carry memories. I did not know you would be here, but the connection was too strong to ignore. I needed to come, to honor the bond that your wife and I shared, however briefly." James listened in silence, trying to take it all in. Her words were simple, yet they carried a weight he could not fully understand. The idea that Alina had left ripples in the lives of others, even outside of their marriage, filled him with a strange sense of wonder. He felt a sudden closeness to her memory, a sense that her spirit was still present, guiding him even now. For several minutes, they stood in quiet contemplation, the horse moving gently under Ahioka's hands. The world around them, the fields, the trees, the distant mountains, seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them in that shared moment of understanding. James realized that he had been holding onto his grief in a way that had isolated him, but now, for the first time in years, he felt the possibility of connection, even in unexpected ways. Finally, he asked, "Can you tell me, what did she say to you? About me?" "About our life here." Ahioka's eyes softened and she took a slow breath. "She spoke of love," she said quietly. "She spoke of your kindness, your devotion, the way you cared for the land and the animals. She spoke of her happiness, of the moments that were small but beautiful. She trusted me with her thoughts, and in that way I carry her memory with me." James felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He had missed Alina so deeply, and yet hearing that someone else had known her, appreciated her, and remembered her in this way was unexpectedly comforting. It was as if a part of Alina had returned to him, not in the form of loss, but in the form of shared memory, a connection that bridged distance and time. Over the next hour, James and Ahioka spoke quietly, sharing stories of the past. Ahioka told him about her own life, about the loss of her husband years ago, and about her travels with her horse. She spoke of the hardships she had faced, the moments of sorrow, and the small joys she had discovered along the way. James listened intently, realizing that grief could be both isolating and connecting, depending on how it was shared. Through their conversation, James began to see a pattern, a way that life had a mysterious way of intertwining people's stories. Eleanor had touched Ahioka's life, and now Ahioka had touched his. It was as if the universe had arranged this encounter to remind him that love and memory are never truly lost, but continue to live on in unexpected ways. As the morning turned to afternoon, James offered Ahioka some food and water. They sat together under the shade of a tree, eating quietly and watching the horses graze. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with understanding rather than awkwardness. James realized that for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of peace. He was not alone in his memories, and the presence of Ahioka and the connection through Eleanor made him feel less burdened by grief. At one point, Ahioka turned to him and said, "Your wife's name, it is strong even now. It carries love, it carries kindness, and it carries the bond you shared. I whisper it sometimes to remember to honor her." Hearing Eleanor's name again, spoken by someone who had known her, filled James with a warmth he had not felt in years. He realized that memory itself is a living thing, growing and moving through the lives of those it touches. Eleanor was still part of the world, still part of the land they had loved together, and still capable of connecting people in ways he could not have imagined. By late afternoon, Ahioka prepared to leave, as she often traveled from place to place. But before she rode off, she looked at James with a serious, gentle expression. "Your wife left many marks on this world, James, and so have you. Remember that grief is not just sorrow, it is also a reminder of love that endures." James nodded, feeling the truth of her words. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside him. I needed to hear that." As Ahioka and her horse disappeared over the horizon, James stood in the field, feeling the weight of the day's encounter. He had come face to face with a living memory of his wife, and it had changed something inside him. The grief that had seemed endless now carried a spark of hope, a reminder that connections endure beyond death, and that love leaves traces in the hearts of others, sometimes in ways we cannot predict. That evening, James sat on his porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains. He thought of Eleanor, of Ahioka, and of the strange, beautiful way their lives had intersected. Though he missed his wife terribly, he felt a sense of comfort that had been absent for years. The memory of Eleanor, spoken aloud and shared with another, had given him a gift he did not expect, the reassurance that love, once given, never truly fades. For the first time in a long while, James allowed himself to imagine that the next day might bring more discoveries, more moments of connection, and perhaps even more ways to honor Eleanor's memory. And as he drifted to sleep that night, he carried with him the whispered name, Eleanor, and the knowledge that her spirit and the bonds she had created were still very much alive. After the morning that changed everything for James, he couldn't stop thinking about Ahioka and the strange, comforting connection she had brought into his life. For days, she remained near the edge of his ranch, visiting quietly, always with her horse. Sometimes she spoke little, tending to the animal with gentle care, and sometimes she shared fragments of her story. James listened eagerly, learning more about her life with each encounter, yet always sensing that much remained untold. One afternoon, as the sun cast a warm glow across the fields, James approached Ahioka while she was sitting under a large mesquite tree. Her horse grazed calmly nearby, and she looked up at him with a faint smile. "You wanted to talk?" she asked softly. "Yes," James replied, settling on the ground near her. "I want to understand. I want to know more about you, about her, about everything you shared." His voice carried a mix of curiosity and reverence, as if he were approaching something sacred. Ahioka nodded, her eyes distant as she began to speak. "My story is long and it is filled with loss," she said. but perhaps sharing it will help you understand how I came to know your wife." She paused, brushing her fingers gently over the horse's mane. "I grew up in a small Apache community. Life was not always easy, but it was filled with lessons, with stories, and with the love of family and land. My husband, whom I loved deeply, passed away when I was still young. His absence left a space that nothing could fill, and I wandered for years seeking meaning, carrying his memory with me and learning to live with the grief that followed." James listened, imagining the depth of sorrow she must have felt. He had known grief, but Ahioka's words made him realize that each person's journey through loss was unique, shaped by their own experiences and memories. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "I can't imagine how hard that must have been." Ahioka's gaze softened and she smiled faintly. "Grief changes us," she said, "but it also teaches us. It teaches us to appreciate the moments we have, to hold on to love even when it seems lost. That is why when I met your wife, even for a brief time, I recognized a kindred spirit. Elinor carried her own grief and love, but she shared it openly, with warmth, kindness, and honesty. Our meeting was short, but it left a mark on my life. We spoke of our losses, of the people we loved, and of the lives we had built despite the pain we carried." James could feel the weight of her words in his chest. For the first time, he understood that Elinor's life had touched more people than he had ever known. Her kindness, her gentleness, and her presence had made a difference, even to someone he had never met before this moment. He felt a mixture of pride, sorrow, and awe. "Tell me about her," he said softly. "Tell me everything you remember." Ahioka nodded, closing her eyes for a moment as if she were stepping back into the past. "Elinor was full of light," she said. "Even in the face of sadness, she carried hope. When we met, she was traveling through the area, exploring the land, learning about the stories of the people who had lived here before. She asked questions with genuine curiosity, and she listened with her heart. She wanted to understand life as it was in its simplest and truest form. She spoke of you often, of your love for the land, the animals, and for her. She trusted me with her thoughts, and I will always remember her honesty and openness." James felt a lump in his throat. It was as if he could see Elinor again, not as she had been in the house they shared, but as she had been in the wider world, kind, open-hearted, and capable of touching lives in ways he had never imagined. "It's incredible," he said. "I never knew she had met someone like you." "She never mentioned it." Ahioka shook her head. "She didn't need to. Some connections are meant to remain private, treasured between those who share them. But I knew she wanted someone to remember her spirit, her love, and her presence. That is why I am here now." When I whispered her name the other day, it was a way of honoring that bond, of keeping her memory alive. James felt a strange warmth in his chest. The pain of loss was still there, but now it was accompanied by something else. A feeling that Elinor's life and love were still very much alive, carried forward by the people she had touched. He realized that grief, though painful, could also be a bridge, connecting lives across time and distance. For hours they spoke. Ahioka shared stories of her childhood, of the traditions she had learned from her parents and elders, and of the ways in which she had found strength after her husband's death. She spoke of the desert, the mountains, and the rivers that had shaped her life, and of the lessons she had learned from the land itself. James shared stories of Elinor, of their life together on the ranch, of the little rituals and routines that had made their days meaningful. As the afternoon sun began to lower in the sky, James realized that he felt closer to Elinor than he had in years. He could see her in Ahioka's stories, hear her in her words, and feel her presence in the quiet moments between them. It was a connection that transcended time and space, a reminder that love and memory endure in ways we cannot always understand. Ahioka looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "The past shapes us," she said, "but it also guides us. Elinor's life touched mine, and now it touches yours again. That is the gift of connection. We carry the people we love within us, and they continue to live through the stories we tell and the memories we cherish." James nodded slowly. He understood that this encounter was not just about remembering Alina. It was about learning to carry her spirit forward, to honor her life by living fully, even in the face of loss. The quiet bond he felt with Ahioka was a testament to that truth, a reminder that grief and love could coexist, and that memories could bring both sorrow and comfort. As evening approached, they tended to the horses together. Ahioka's movements were graceful and confident, and James watched in admiration as she guided the animals with care and understanding. He realized that she had learned to navigate life with resilience, finding ways to heal while honoring the memories of those she had lost. It was a lesson he could apply to his own life, a reminder that love and grief are intertwined, and that both can guide us toward growth and understanding. When it was time for Ahioka to leave for the night, James felt a pang of longing. He had grown accustomed to her presence, to the way she had brought light and perspective into his quiet life. But he also understood that she needed her journey, just as he needed to continue living with the memories of Alina. "Thank you," he said softly, "for sharing your story, for remembering her, and for helping me see things in a new way." Ahioka smiled, her eyes reflecting a mixture of sadness and peace. "It is my honor," she said. "And remember, James, your wife's spirit is always with you. It is in the land, in the animals, and in the memories you carry. You are never truly alone." James watched as she mounted her horse and rode toward the horizon, the fading light casting long shadows across the fields. He felt a sense of clarity and calm that he had not known in years. The grief he carried for Alina had not disappeared, but it had transformed, becoming a source of connection, reflection, and understanding. He realized that life is full of unexpected moments, moments that remind us of love, of loss, and of the ways in which memories can shape our present and future. That night, James sat on his porch under a sky filled with stars. He thought of Alina, of Ahioka, and of the intricate ways their lives had intersected. He felt a deep gratitude for the encounter, knowing that it had brought him closer to understanding both grief and love. He whispered Alina's name softly, not in sorrow, but in remembrance, feeling her presence as clearly as if she were sitting beside him. In the days that followed, James reflected on the lessons he had learned from Ahioka's stories. He began to tend to the ranch with renewed purpose, caring for the animals and the land with a sense of joy and gratitude. He understood that memories are not just echoes of the past. They are guides for the present, reminders that the love we give continues to shape the world, even after those we cherish are gone. And as he worked, he often thought of Ahioka and the quiet strength she carried with her. Her story had touched him deeply, and he realized that grief, when shared and understood, could become a bridge, connecting lives in ways that were both unexpected and profoundly meaningful. The encounter with her had reminded him that love endures, that memory is a living force, and that even in the face of loss, life could still be full of beauty, connection, and hope. After weeks of quiet mornings and shared stories, James found himself looking forward to seeing Ahioka each day. Her presence brought a gentle calm to the ranch, and her wisdom and quiet strength helped him face memories that had once felt too heavy to carry. They spent hours together tending to the horses, walking the fields, and occasionally sharing meals under the shade of the trees. There was a comfortable rhythm to their days, a sense that they were slowly building something meaningful through trust, understanding, and shared grief. One morning, James noticed Ahioka sitting quietly on the edge of the orchard, her horse grazing nearby. She looked toward the rising sun, her face reflecting a mixture of peace and sadness. James approached her slowly, carrying 2 cups of warm tea. "I thought you might like this," he said, offering one to her. Ahioka smiled softly and accepted the cup. "Thank you," she said, her voice calm. The mornings are better with tea and with someone to share the quiet. James sat down beside her, feeling the warmth of the tea seep into his hands. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees and the soft neighing of the horses. In the silence, James felt a deep connection, not just to Ahioka, but to the land, to the memories of Alina, and to the sense that life could still hold meaning after loss. After a while, Ahioka began to speak. "Grief is a journey," she said softly. "It is not something you can escape, and it is not something you can rush. But it can teach you about love, about patience, and about the strength that comes from carrying memories with you." James nodded, thinking about the long months he had spent alone, dwelling on the absence of Alina. He realized that Ahioka's words were true. He had been so focused on what he had lost that he had forgotten to see the love that still remained in his heart, the connections that still mattered, and the life he could still live with intention and care. "Your words, they make sense," he said quietly. "I've been so focused on the emptiness that I didn't notice the beauty around me, the animals, the land, even the memories that bring comfort instead of pain. You've reminded me that love doesn't end with death. It continues in the ways we remember, in the people we meet, and in the moments we share." Ahioka looked at him, her eyes reflecting both compassion and understanding. "That is exactly it," she said. "The people we love are never truly gone. They live in our hearts, in our actions, and in the ways we carry their spirit forward. Alina touched my life, and now, through you, her influence continues to grow. It is a circle of memory and love, and we are all part of it." They sat in silence for a while, watching the horses graze and the wind move gently through the grass. James realized that he felt lighter than he had in years, that the heaviness of grief had begun to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose and connection. Ahioka's presence had become a source of comfort, a reminder that even in sorrow, there is room for hope and healing. Over the next few days, James and Ahioka spent more time together exploring the ranch. They walked along the streams, tending to the horses and sharing quiet conversations about life, loss, and resilience. Ahioka spoke of the lessons she had learned from her own experiences, of the ways she had found peace after tragedy, and of the importance of accepting both sorrow and joy. James listened intently, finding wisdom in her words and learning to apply it to his own journey. One afternoon, as they rested under a large oak tree, Ahioka shared a story about a time she had faced a difficult choice. She had been traveling alone, feeling lost and uncertain about the future, when she came across a small herd of wild horses. They were wary and frightened, but she approached them gently, earning their trust over time. Through that experience, she had learned patience, compassion, and the power of quiet persistence. "It is the same with grief," she said. "You cannot force it. You must approach it gently, with care, and allow it to guide you rather than overwhelm you." James thought about his own life and the months he had spent in solitude. He realized that he had been trying to force himself past grief, pushing it away rather than acknowledging it fully. Ahioka's words opened his eyes to a new perspective, that healing comes not from ignoring loss, but from facing it with love and understanding, and from allowing the memories of those we cherish to guide us forward. As the days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger. James found himself sharing more about Alina, recounting memories of their life together on the ranch, the little rituals they had shared, and the dreams they had once held. Ahioka listened with empathy and respect, offering insights and reflections that helped James see his experiences in a new light. Through their conversations, he began to understand that grief could be a bridge, connecting people across time, culture, and experience. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, James and Ahioka sat together on the porch. The air was warm and still, and the ranch seemed to hold its breath. "Do you think it is possible," James asked quietly, To find peace after losing someone you love so deeply. Ahioka smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. I do, she said. Peace does not mean forgetting. It means embracing the memories, carrying them with you, and allowing them to shape the way you live. Love continues, even after death, in the ways we honor it, the choices we make, and the connections we nurture. James felt a profound sense of understanding. He realized that peace was not a destination, but a journey that required patience, reflection, and the courage to carry both sorrow and joy in one's heart. Ahioka had helped him take the first steps on that path, and for that, he was deeply grateful. In the days that followed, James began to notice small changes in himself. He approached his work on the ranch with renewed energy, finding joy in the animals, the land, and the routines that had once felt burdensome. He spent more time reflecting on his memories of Alina, not with pain, but with gratitude for the love they had shared. And he found comfort in the presence of Ahioka, whose wisdom, compassion, and quiet strength continued to guide him. Together, they tended the horses, repaired fences, and worked in the orchard, sharing laughter and quiet moments of reflection. James realized that the bond they had formed was more than friendship. It was a partnership of healing, built on trust, empathy, and the shared experience of grief. Through their connection, he learned that life could still hold meaning, beauty, and love, even in the aftermath of loss. One afternoon, as they walked along a path that led to a small stream, Ahioka paused and looked at James. "You have come a long way," she said softly. "You have embraced the memories, faced the grief, and opened your heart to connection. That is the true strength of love. It endures even in the face of loss." James nodded, feeling the truth of her words resonate deeply within him. "I understand now," he said. "Grief is not just sadness. It is a reflection of the love we have experienced, and it can guide us, teach us, and help us grow. You have helped me see that, and I am grateful." As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the fields, James and Ahioka stood in quiet contemplation. The ranch was alive with the soft sounds of nature, the rustle of leaves, the gentle neighing of horses, and the distant call of birds returning to their nests. In that moment, James felt a deep sense of harmony, a sense that life, grief, and love were all interconnected in ways that he was only beginning to understand. The days continued in this rhythm, with shared work, stories, and quiet reflection. James found that he no longer felt the heavy weight of loss pressing down on him. Instead, he carried a sense of hope, a reminder that Alina's spirit lived on, not only in his memories, but also in the connections he had formed with Ahioka and the land they both cherished. Through their shared healing, James learned that life does not end with grief. It continues, shaped by the love we give, the memories we honor, and the bonds we nurture. Ahioka had shown him that healing is not linear, but a journey that requires courage, empathy, and the willingness to embrace both sorrow and joy. And in that journey, he discovered that even in the midst of loss, life could still hold meaning, beauty, and connection. The days passed peacefully on the ranch. James had grown used to the quiet rhythm of life, but with Ahioka nearby, the days no longer felt lonely or empty. Each morning, he woke with a sense of anticipation, knowing that he would see her, hear her thoughts, and share in a connection that had brought him both comfort and understanding. He had learned to carry his grief with gentleness, allowing the memory of Alina to guide his actions rather than weigh him down. One morning, as the first light of dawn touched the mountains, James noticed Ahioka standing near the edge of the field, her horse grazing nearby. She seemed more pensive than usual, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. James approached quietly, feeling that something important was about to happen. "I've been thinking," Ahioka began softly, "about the way our lives intersect. It is strange, isn't it? How two people from completely different worlds can meet and share such a connection. And yet here we are, drawn together by memories, grief, and love. James nodded, feeling the truth in her words. "It is strange," he said, "but it feels right, like it was meant to happen. Your presence has helped me more than I could ever explain." Ahioka smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "And you have helped me as well," she said. "Sometimes we meet people not to change our lives completely, but to remind us of what is already within us, the strength to heal, the courage to move forward, and the capacity to love again." James thought about the weeks they had spent together, the stories they had shared, and the quiet moments of reflection that had brought him clarity and peace. He realized that her words were true. The grief he carried for Alina had not disappeared, but it had transformed. It had become a bridge to understanding, to connection, and to the beauty of life that continued around him. "I never thought I would feel this way again," he admitted. "That grief could lead to something hopeful. That memories could become a source of strength instead of sorrow. You've shown me that." Ahioka nodded. "It is the way of life," she said. "Loss teaches us to cherish, to remember, and to carry love forward. Your wife's spirit lives on, not only in your heart, but also in the actions we take and the connections we make. She is part of the world in ways we may not even understand." For a long while, they stood in silence, watching the sun rise higher, warming the fields and casting a golden glow over the ranch. The horses grazed peacefully nearby, and the land seemed alive with the quiet pulse of nature. James felt a profound sense of gratitude for the life he still had, for the memories he carried, and for the unexpected bond that had grown between him and Ahioka. Over the following days, James and Ahioka continued their routine, but something had shifted. The connection between them had deepened, no longer just a bond of shared grief, but a partnership built on understanding, respect, and mutual support. They worked together to repair fences, tend the horses, and care for the orchard, their conversations filled with laughter, reflection, and quiet moments of contemplation. One afternoon, as they rested near the stream at the edge of the ranch, Ahioka spoke of her journey. "I have traveled far and seen many lands," she said, "but there is something special about this place. It carries history, memory, and life. Your wife brought light here once, and now it continues through you and through the work we do together. That is the beauty of love. It never truly ends." James felt a lump in his throat. He realized that Alina's life had rippled far beyond the moments they had shared. Her kindness, her spirit, and her love continued to influence the world, and now he had the privilege of experiencing that legacy firsthand. "Do you ever miss him?" James asked softly, curious about her own experiences with loss. Ahioka's eyes darkened slightly with memory, but her smile remained gentle. "Every day," she said. "But I have learned that missing someone is not the same as losing them entirely. They live on in our hearts, in our stories, and in the lessons they leave behind. I carry him with me just as you carry Alina, and in that way they remain with us, guiding us through the days ahead." James nodded, feeling a deep connection to her words. He understood now that grief was not something to conquer, but something to embrace. It was a reminder of the love that had shaped his life, a force that could guide him toward understanding, empathy, and resilience. As evening approached, Ahioka prepared to leave for a short journey, as she often traveled to neighboring lands with her horse. James felt a quiet ache at the thought of her departure, but he understood that her life, like his, was a journey, one that required movement, reflection, and the freedom to explore. "Will you come back?" he asked quietly, trying to mask the longing in his voice. Ahioka smiled softly. "I will return," she said. "But remember, James, you do not need me to carry her memory. You have already learned to do so yourself. My presence is only a reminder, a guide. You have everything you need within you to honor her and to continue living fully." James felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of gratitude and hope. He watched as Ahioka mounted her horse and rode slowly toward the horizon, her figure silhouetted against the setting sun. Though she disappeared from view, he felt her presence lingering, like a soft echo in the air, reminding him that love endures beyond absence. That night, James sat on the porch, looking at the stars scattered across the sky. He thought of Alina, of Ahioka, and of the many ways life had brought them together. He whispered Alina's name, not in sorrow, but in remembrance, feeling her spirit as vividly as he had on the morning he first heard Ahioka call it. The following days were peaceful. James continued his work on the ranch, tending to the animals and the land with a renewed sense of purpose. He thought often of Ahioka and the lessons she had shared, the lessons of patience, reflection, and the enduring power of love. He found joy in the small things, the gentle nuzzle of a horse, the sound of water flowing in the stream, the warmth of sunlight on his face. One morning, as he walked through the fields, he noticed something unexpected, a small wildflower growing near the edge of the orchard, vibrant and full of life. He bent down and touched its petals gently, feeling a sense of connection to the world, to Alina, and to the journey that had brought him here. Life, he realized, was fragile but resilient, sorrowful but full of beauty, and endlessly capable of surprising those who are willing to notice. Weeks later, Ahioka returned briefly to the ranch, her presence like a gentle breeze carrying stories from afar. She and James shared quiet conversations, tending to the horses and reflecting on the months that had passed. She reminded him that Alina's memory, though tied to the past, continued to shape the present and guide the future. "Remember," she said one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, "the people we love are never truly gone. They live in the land, in the animals, and in the hearts of those who remember them. Your wife is always with you, James. And you carry her spirit forward with every choice you make." James nodded, understanding fully the depth of her words. He had learned that grief, though painful, could become a source of strength, empathy, and growth. He had discovered that love endures, carried not only in memory but in action, in connection, and in the care we show for the world and for each other. As the days turned into months, James continued to live with the memory of Alina, now enriched by the lessons and stories shared with Ahioka. He found peace in the rhythms of life, in the care of the ranch, and in the quiet moments of reflection. The grief that had once felt unbearable had transformed into a gentle reminder of the love that shaped his life, a love that continued to guide him in all he did. One evening, as the stars filled the sky and the ranch lay quiet in the cool night air, James sat on the porch, sipping a warm cup of tea. He thought of the journey that had brought him from sorrow to understanding, from loss to connection, and from loneliness to a renewed sense of purpose. He felt gratitude for the memories, for Ahioka's guidance, and for the enduring presence of Alina in his heart. He whispered her name softly, smiling through the tears that came unbidden. "Alina," he said, "your spirit lives on, and I will carry it with me always." In that quiet moment, James understood the truth of life's delicate balance. Love does not end with loss. Memories are living things that shape the present and guide the future. Grief, when embraced, becomes a bridge to understanding, connection, and growth. And even in the face of sorrow, life continues, full of beauty, purpose, and hope. As the night deepened, James felt a sense of peace he had never known. He had learned to honor the past, to embrace the present, and to face the future with courage and love. The memory of Alina remained vivid, a guiding light that would never fade. And though Ahioka would continue her journey across the lands, her presence had left an indelible mark on his life, reminding him that even in grief, connection and healing are always possible. James leaned back, looking at the stars, and felt the quiet assurance that life, love, and memory are enduring forces, forces that guide us, heal us, and remind us of the beauty that exists even after loss. And with that understanding, he closed his eyes, letting the peace of the night fill him, ready to face tomorrow with a heart strengthened by love, memory, and the quiet wisdom of those who have walked before us.